Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, October 24th, and this week, taxi drivers protest, Lyft tests a loyalty program, and Uber pays $4,000 to drivers. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Cooney. Brian, happy spooky season Friday. Is
Happy
this?
spooky season Friday, Jared. I was not expecting that lead in,
I
but I
love it.
wholeheartedly agree with it.
Yeah, for those who watch, so Brian, you and I usually have meetings before this, but I never let him know what I'm going to say, and I like to throw curveballs at him to see how you respond to
Yeah, I felt like I handled that like a champ. I could have lost it, but
that. I mean, it is spooky season, right? It's a week until Halloween. I guess it really is. It's kind of
it
crazy.
is. Do you have a costume ready to go?
I do actually. Well, it's if anyone knows this who's watching, I don't even know if you know this. There's a very famous internet cat called Larry. It's this black cat, and so I'm gonna dress as Larry. If anyone knows what I'm talking about online, pretty famous in the Instagram world. So
Yeah, I am very excited to see that. You're gonna have to send pictures.
yes, I'm gonna. Good old Larry. Look it up.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious cat. But that being said, we got some interesting stories this week. None around Halloween, unfortunately, but some that are quite interesting. So we're going to get started here with our first story. And this is actually out of the US, but I think it's still important kind of about the state of gig economy in general. Taxis are preparing a total shutdown. And this is from Catalan News. And they reported, quote, Barcelona's taxi drivers are planning what they call a total shutdown of the city on Tuesday night in protest against FC Barcelona's new partnership with Uber. Elite Taxi has condemned the club's sponsorship deal, which makes Uber an official partner of FC Barcelona, which is a soccer team. They call it an agreement with, quote, criminals who have built their business on deregulation, labor exploitation, and tax evasion. The union warned that further protests will follow future matches if the partnership is not canceled. Brian, this is really interesting because in the U.S., soccer is not that big of a deal. In Europe, it is literally God, and yeah, I mean, it's also very interesting how they're looking at Uber in this way. Just very intense and very like we don't want any of this, and they're calling them out as legit criminals, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. It really speaks to the heat. Everybody is, emotions are very high. Taxi drivers have been screwed by the rideshare companies since the very beginning. And they're obviously fed up and they're looking to direct that anger at anybody who is associating with the rideshare companies. Um, I think that this protest, we can look at it in a nuanced way. There's several directions here. First of all, I think it's good that the taxi drivers are using their voices. We talk about the fact that rideshare drivers need to act as a collective, that nobody is really paying attention to the one guy shouting on the street corner, but when you work together, you can get things done. So I certainly commend the taxi organizations for speaking their mind collectively, trying to get things accomplished, and certainly their voices are being heard. In the same vein, I'm not really sure that boycotting, a soccer club is really the best avenue to try to get change that's going to benefit the taxi workers. I think that lobbying government, lobbying the local, um, like the mayor, who have allowed Uber and Lyft into the city to be unregulated in a lot of ways, to drive down taxi medallion prices. Um, they're the ones who need to take a serious look at rideshare and determine whether these companies are acting in a legal or appropriate manner, and should have set boundaries and standards from the very beginning. Um, Now, lobbying against the soccer club, it's kind of like standing outside and saying we don't want Pepsi to be served. We prefer a different organization. It should be Coke. I'm just not sure that anything is really going to change by um, protesting the club and their business partnerships, when in actuality it should have been handled at a higher level from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I wanted to highlight this article mostly to show really what's happening in other countries as far as how they respond to Uber and Uber initiatives. I mean, we see it all the time in the US. Uber Eats ads are everywhere, and Uber Eats is sponsoring XYZ, and Uber's doing this. So, and also, I do understand why they're protesting, because they realize if Uber's the official sponsor, Ubers are going to have priority at these soccer games. But like you said, I mean, isn't it already that way? And honestly, it may be too late, but again, it was interesting to see their response and truly calling them out as criminals, which I thought was pretty aggressive. Maybe not wrong, honestly, but really taking a stand and saying we hate this and we hate you, and we're letting you know. So, uh,
Yeah, no, I just and just one more thing. I guess I question what the end game is.
yeah,
Like if they're protesting the soccer clubs, like do they all of a sudden think that the soccer clubs are going to be advocating for them in local government and say, actually, taxi drivers need a better shake here? Like I'm just not sure that they're directing their attention to the right place.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And again, this is a very short article and very responsive or reactive to what's happening. So. We're going to move on to our next story. Lyft doing some things again. They are testing a new loyalty rewards program. And now this is from Bloomberg. And they've reported Lyft is piloting a program that offers some customers cash back on future rides, the latest effort to win over users from the rival Uber. The new program will let users earn as much as 5% cash back on rides if they opt to auto reload their account with cash. Setting the auto refill amount to $100 comes with other benefits like relaxed cancellation fees and free upgrades each month. The company is opening early access to the feature for riders in the Bay Area, as well as customers who have been using Lyft for at least 10 years. Launching the cashback program is another way Lyft is looking to deepen its loyalty for users who might have otherwise chosen Uber, which at this moment still owns 70% of the market. I'm going to be honest, and if there's anyone that ever watches this show as part of Lyft, you guys got to be way more aggressive. They keep dipping their toes in these loyalty programs, and then they yank them back. So, if they're going to do this, which it sounds like it could be good, that's great. But the article even states Uber already has a rewards program. So it's like, I don't know what they're trying to do, but they are way too conservative to win this market.
I agree. I think that this is, I don't want to say it's too little, too late. It's just like they're behind the times. Uber has already had programs similar to this. I'm not sure that I want my money tied up in, in the Lyft app. I think that saving 5% on a ride when a lot of times I'm actually like shopping between the two. Like I will open up Uber, I will open up Lyft, and I'll decide right then based on the price which one I'm going to take. And a lot of time, it varies. Sometimes Uber's cheaper, sometimes Lyft is cheaper, but oftentimes it's more than 5% that I'm saving just by choosing the right app at the right time. So I think that by forcing consumers to put their money into the app and then keeping them tied to Lyft, I don't know that a lot of people are going to want to do that. To your point, I think that we have loyalty programs with other rideshare companies that that kind of mirror what the benefits of what Lyft is offering. So if they want to steal some of this market share, they need to be far more creative, far more aggressive. Um, you know, they need to play a different hand. They need to establish themselves as truly a different type of company. And for years they did. They were the driver-friendly company. They were the fun-loving pink mustache type. That was their persona. And as they've moved away from that, they're really just playing catch up to Lyft or to Uber. I'm sorry, and this doesn't really seem like enough to force people who are traditionally Uber users to come over to Lyft and to force people like me who use both to be loyal to Lyft. There's just a lot more work that needs to be done, and this does not move the needle, at least in terms of my view of it.
Yeah, and the other thing too that is a red flag, and it's honest, they should start taking a playbook, not even from Uber, but from Waymo. A lot of times they're doing these pilot programs, but they're doing it in really safe places like San Francisco and these Silicon Valley. We saw really how aggressive Waymo went from like, okay, Minnesota or some like area that's like a challenge. if they're going to do these things, no one, there's a million other services in the Bay Area for stuff like this, whether it be through these tech companies or third party tech companies, because there's a million startups all the time. It's like if you want to make a difference, go to the Midwest and launch this program, or like
Right.
go do something that's really aggressive, like what you said. Okay, if I have to choose between the two, maybe even if it's slightly more for Lyft, I'm still going to choose it because of the search, the added features or services or whatever that they do better than Uber. They're just not. It's they really do. It really feels like they are just remarkably far behind. I'm calling this now. I predict that it's going to end up being a game between Waymo and Uber. I don't know if Lyft is going to survive this next transition unless they do something dramatic.
Yeah.
Because
No,
you're
I could
just,
see
I
a
just don't see
situation
it.
where Waymo and Lyft end up partnering to take more of that market share. And I would think that we'd be calling them Waymos, not Lyfts, if that happens. I see
Oh yeah.
Waymo better company. And that's really the only way I can see Lyft surviving long term is if they are, they join up with one of these autonomous vehicle companies. And um, I think that Waymo is probably the big dog who would be able to take on a company like Lyft. Um, but who knows? It might be Uber and Waymo that join, and then Lyft is just so.
Then they're really dead. I mean, I don't know what they would do. They have no chance.
Yeah,
Yeah, crazy stuff. So that's again, I'm always hoping to see some sort of plot twist with Lyft, but I'm just not seeing it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens out of it. And again, they'll probably pull the pilot program anyway. So moving to our final story um, is regarding actually Uber, of course, and they are paying $4,000 for drivers to go EV. So this is from The Verge, and they reported, quote, as it rushes to meet its pledge for the 100% of trips in EV vehicles by 2030, Uber is offering grants of up to $4,000 for drivers to swap their gas guzzlers for zero tailpipe emissions vehicles. The company is also dropping its Uber Green branding in favor of the more simple Uber Electric. Uber has said it will be completely carbon neutral in North America and Europe by 2030 and in all global markets by 2040. But when it first announced this pledge in 2020, it said it wouldn't directly pay drivers to ditch their gas burning vehicles in favor of EVs. Now, the company is reversing that decision in hopes that direct payments can help accelerate EV adoption. So there's a lot of things at play here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. First off, is and we talked about this, but first off, when they made this pledge in 2020, it was still believed that a lot of the EV infrastructure and money and government funding was going to EVs and green initiatives. As we know with this administration, that is not a priority, and they even said that the some of these tax credits are running out. And so they bet big that from 2020 to 2030, we're going to have all these initiatives and we're going to have all these tax write offs, and this is going to be great. Clearly, that's not happening. And now they're less than 5 years away from being fully carbon neutral. I honestly, and I know why they're throwing this money out here to try to do this. I don't. I just don't know. I just don't see how they're going to pull this off.
yeah. I
I don't
think
see it.
that's really the takeaway that I saw as well. I don't think it's enough. I mean, I'm certainly not going to criticize them for trying to meet this goal. The $4,000 credit for drivers who want to make that switch, it's not nothing. Um, but I do see that because the political environment has changed so much, because the tax benefits have changed so much, that there's just really not a way for many drivers to make that switch if they haven't already. Um, $4,000, that would be great if it was in addition to the subsidies that you were getting back in 2020 and I think during the Biden administration. That could essentially pay for most of an electric car. But now, if it's just the 4 grand, most rideshare drivers are not looking to make upgrades of that nature, and $4,000 is not really enough to offset the difference between, say, a nice used vehicle that they can, traditional gas vehicle that they can use for rideshare, and a new electric vehicle. Um, I don't see it being enough to push drivers down that direction. Now that said, if drivers are able to make that move and that $4,000 does get them over the hump, having an electric vehicle can be a great way for drivers to save costs. It obviously is going to cost them less in terms of gas. A lot of customers are very happy to be picked up by electric vehicles. So there are a lot of reasons for drivers to make that transition, but I'm not sure that Uber is sweetening the pot enough to actually encourage enough drivers to make the move that they're going to meet their carbon goals by the end of the decade here.
Yeah, and maybe I forgot here why this initiative started, but do you know what was there? I mean, was this just simply a PR move, an initiative? Like there was no push from the government or anyone else to do this, right? This is sort of a self fulfilling goal, correct? They don't need to do this.
So, well, I think at the time there was some government pressure to get, to be carbon neutral. It was an administration that was trying to be green and trying to pave the way for an all electric future. But I do believe that, as you're saying, that this was largely Uber coming in and saying this is a priority for us. We understand that there were studies that were coming out about all the carbon that the vehicles were putting into the environment based on I can recall the stories, the downtime that drivers have where they're just kind of sitting around waiting for a ride. So at the time that they made this promise and started this initiative, I think there was a lot of political pressure. There was public goodwill, and the company said, "All right, let's do this." And the environment was just very different then. The benefits, um, like we said, politically, the benefits from a tax perspective, they have all changed. And I just think because of all those changes, this $4,000 is not going to be sufficient to get over the hump and actually accomplish the goal. I hope they do. I don't think why would anybody have a problem with um, Uber and Lyft and all these companies that are putting cars on the road trying to do better for our environment. I think it's a no-brainer that it makes sense, but the financial incentive has to be there to actually get people to move.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that they're sticking to their guns on this and still talking about it. So obviously, it seems like they're going to try to go through with it. Now, it's still 4 years away. They could very easily in 2 years be like, we're never going to do this and to shut it down. And we'll see. But you are right. I mean, ultimately, a lot of drivers have the EVs are really happy with them for multiple reasons. I think that they're less maintenance, no gas. Like you said, consumers like them better. There's better cars in general a lot of times. So yeah, if you can pull it off, it is definitely a benefit. But yeah, this will be interesting to see how this story progresses. It may just die. This may be the last time we hear about this initiative, unless they really pull something off. I mean, Lyft hasn't even spoken about this in a while, and I know they were looking at doing it too, but they got other issues. So I think they're focused on that instead. Yeah, but those are the stories this week. And Brian, I'll give you the final say before we head into the weekend.
Yeah, just reminding everybody that Legal Rideshare is always available for free consultations. Should you find yourself in an accident or injured on the road, please give us a call. You can find all of our contact information on legalrideshare.com. We can help you set up the insurance claim, collect everything that you're entitled to, lost wages, pain and suffering, the cost of medical treatment, any damage that you sustain. Please contact us early as these cases do not get better with time. We want to get started right away for you. And like I said, legalrideshare.com is the best way to get in touch with us.
Thank you, Brian. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.